Hello everybody and welcome to the Overwatch League once more. I'm Mitch Leslie here with Matthew Morello bringing you some action on a Friday. You can't tell me you've got anything better to do right now. You're sitting right where you are because we've got two charged up matches for you, Matthew. Of course, our Countdown Cup continues. We're still in the hero pool phase now as week number 2 begins.
Yeah, so this will be the last week of the hero pool phase. After this, we'll move into the open pools where everything's allowed, and you see what's on the line here in the Countdown Cup yet again.
That's right. Of course, not only the prize money is important, but our first, second place semi-finalist teams are being awarded extra wins to their record, which matter once we get to our end of season playoffs. So keep an eye on those. Obviously, there is cash up for grabs for many of our teams, but let's have a look at the standings so far after week number 1. Most teams have already played 2 matches. Some still have a bit of catch up to do, like the Philadelphia Fusion. Yeah. But right now, Paris, again, look to continue their trend of strength with 2 3-0s, and the Uprising are on the other end of the spectrum with the Titans. They're both 0-3s.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the Philadelphia Fusion, and I expect them to be very good in this meta, so excited to start to see them play. And Atlanta, you know, they do kind of the typical Atlanta thing. They beat a team really bad, they look great, and then they play a team that is a little bit better than them with the Florida Mayhem, and they end up losing that series. They drop a map. We know what happens if they 3-0. They get the win, obviously. If they drop any maps, they're just going to lose the series for Atlanta.
And of course, we heard a little bit from it there on our Stonks and Donks segment, which somehow my video got blown up to 300% of the size.
Yeah, you don't have hair or anything.
No, someone's trying to do me proper dirty out on the Watchpoint side. Now, I reckon I know who it is, but everyone's buying Stonks in the Atlanta Reign as they go up against the Boston Uprising, because I'll be honest, buying Boston stocks right now is the same as buying Hertz stock after they already announced their bankruptcy. That's the position we're in.
You could get this Boston Uprising t-shirt if you're not interested in the stocks of the team. It's quite nice.
Oh, well, that's right. Yes, Matt's representing Boston. I thought it was just Boss, but missing one letter. You know, I don't know what your fashion was like.
I've agreed that if Boston wins this series, I'll wear this shirt the rest of the day.
You're going to wear one shirt the whole day?
Yeah. I'll wear it next week as well.
They're really planning to put a lot on the line. Now, we heard a little bit from Edison, actually, just talking what it is that prevents the Atlanta Reign from getting these wins when they start on the wrong foot. Let's hear what he had to say.
저희가 3대 0으로 이길 때는 항상 파이팅 넘치게 자신감 넘치게 플레이를 했는데 저희가 맵 하나씩 지고 나면은 약간 흔들리는 그 자신감도 좀 줄어들고 흔들리는 경향이 좀 심한 것 같아서 그냥 좀 마인드를 좀 다잡고 이제 좀 더 열심히 하는 게 그런 마인드가 필요할 것 같습니다.
So if you're maybe not super familiar with the Reign as a team, so far, their only victories have come in 3-0s, and when the series have stretched longer, they have tended to fall off. They did get a map win against the Florida Mayhem prior, but they're coming back this week with some changes after that loss.
Yeah, so making some adjustments to the starting lineup for the Atlanta Reign. But it's kind of weird to see Edison just kind of admit that they kind of lose it a little once they lose a map in a series. You want to see the team have a little bit more confidence in that. Today in the starting lineup, you have Pokepo in. So Pokepo will be in for Gator.
Yeah, so that's an interesting change. We haven't seen Pokepo for quite some time. Many will recall that he was the original starting main tank for this roster, and it might imply that we see more Winston or something different today. Obviously, his offsider will still be Hawk, someone who we talk up a bunch on the Sigma role specifically. And look, Hawk sits comfortably in the top 5, and many of these metrics, bear in mind, the Atlanta Reign right now, I don't believe, are a top 5 team. So Hawk is outperforming his team in terms of their placement on the ladder, especially with his eliminations and his involvement in a lot of these team fights.
It makes sense because Atlanta has always thrived in the double shield metas, where Gator's played the Orisa and Hawk has played the Sigma. I believe Bren was mentioning like maybe we see a change in terms of the main tank with Gator moving out, Popo coming in to play some more of the Winston. So we will see that this week. So maybe this will be a tank line that kind of has a little bit better grasp on this meta.
And their opponents today, of course, are the Boston Uprising, who are still searching for some signs of success here throughout our monthly tournament formats. They, unfortunately, you know, obviously they got a huge win against the Houston Outlaws earlier this season. That one went all the way. But in general, I think they've only got 2 wins to their name They, you know, at this point, I would say that, look, playoffs is maybe not something they're looking towards, but they've made recent changes and they really want to solidify this roster heading into next season. This is where it needs to happen.
Yeah, they win a game against Houston earlier in the season when Houston is kind of playing some odd stuff, and then they win a game against the Gladiators right after they get punked, and they started to potentially look a little bit better. We thought they were going to come on as we take a look at the Genji matchup today. It's not really pretty on either side. Neither of these Genjis have really stood out that much, although Erster has not gotten them so much play time as Color Hex.
That's right, and bear in mind as well that Genji has, you know, only really been back in vogue for a few weeks now, so this is still it's at least 30 minutes played, but it's a relatively small sample size, and during that entire time, the Uprising had obviously lost all their matches and not actually won a map. So, you know, that can, it's a chicken and egg kind of thing, but that can obviously affect your statistics. Neither of these players obviously lighting the world on fire, as you pointed out, but let's have a look at our map pool now and see our stages. And a fun one here, map number 2 especially, Numbani comes back into the map pool. Neither of these teams have played it yet this season, but it all begins on the map of Nepal, Matthew.
Yeah, so Nepal, you'll see a ton of Genji, obviously, but I think there's an opportunity to run some other stuff where we've seen, you know, May compositions on Nepal in the past. You can play like some Reaper in like the close quarter scenarios. So I'm interested to see more of what Atlanta does. I think Boston will see a lot of what we saw last week in terms of strategy, but does Atlanta have anything besides Edison, Tracer, and Erster on Genji? Because that's all we saw from them last week, regardless of the map, the mode. It didn't really matter.
Right, and, you know, like you sort of teased, Matt, you know, do we see more Winston play from Pogpo here? Obviously, we saw Gator play it, and it definitely seemed like there wasn't a lot of connection between, you know, Edison and Gator when it came to Tracer combining with the Winston in this dive setup. It felt like Edison was being staved off really easily by BQB's Ash last week. That was what we were looking at. We look, Edison is not getting kills. Why is this happening? We realized, you know, somewhere along the line that it wasn't just Edison being bad. It was that BQB was able just to take the 1v1 and handle him. He needed more assistance. He needed more presence from his Winston. Yeah. And maybe that's what the Atlanta Reign get today. Maybe. It's not guaranteed.
Yeah, you could also see Popo play some Reinhardt. Maybe they want to play some Reinhardt, like Rush type of compositions here on Nepal, which is pretty decent on some of the maps as they feature a lot of close quarter combat. So maybe we get a Reinhardt look, but a lot of the play has been Winston thus far.
The Boston Uprising have shown some promise, especially in the departments of Jerry and Myeonbong. But again, a similar issue to the Atlanta Reign. It was Fusions combining with his other dive DPS to execute those first eliminations in many of the team fights. That had been an issue. Now, we might see like Zai's in these compositions, right? It's something we saw a little bit over in Asia. We were quite critical of it on some maps. Here, though, you can definitely get value from that Zaya, and Punk is an especially accomplished Zaya player.
And they just need to keep Myeongbong alive. Last week, they were not able to do that. I believe Jake put it perfectly, at least in my opinion. A lot of teams try and focus the carry at times when the carry is the Zen for the other team and it's a dive composition. It'll be very difficult for the Zen to stay alive as we have Atlanta come out. So they come out with the Reinhardt. They're not going to play Popo on the Winston here, so just a little bit more of a brawly type of composition.
Look, fortunately for Atlanta, the Uprising aren't actually playing a Doomfist, so a little bit harder to punish the Reinhardt now. It's a nightmare for Ryan to play against Doom on this particular map. But Edison is on the Doomfist here. We'll see what he can sort of set up. Fusions will be a little bit slippery and it catches a Doom in general, but his coalescence coming out early from Myeonbong, and Color Hex is the first elimination in this fight. Not the player you want to lose first, especially despite the fact that both teams were able to use coalescence.
And Boston comes out with this composition, Mitch. You think with Jerry on the Reaper, potentially, like, if they end up bringing out a Winston, this is a good pick. It'll be a sound barrier from Halo trying to keep the Boston Uprising in this, but it doesn't look likely. I mean, they're already down Jerry. They were down Color Hex early on. They're already lacking damage because the Reinhardt on the point, right? Just does way more damage swinging the hammer than the Winston. Maybe a case of Boston throwing a lot in here for nothing, and the Color Hex uses the blade. Come on.
Popo is able to find him fairly early on. Fortunately, the coalescence of Myeonbong, though, yields a little bit more results. Still, the Reign contesting this point, they remain in control. Huck now goes for a Graviton Surge, but is extremely charged up. But Jerry very comfortable able to move up with the Hellfire shotguns and complete fights.
If Myungbong doesn't get the coalescence there and takes out like, what, 3 players, that would have been a really bad fight loss for the Boston Uprising. They had to. At that point, they were just throwing everything they had into that fight. So see what Atlanta decides to do. Edison switches off of Doom, goes to Tracer. So looks like Atlanta is going to try to move towards the point, and Ursa has the Blade. Let's see if he can actually get good value from it.
Jerry
Nice
from the
play from
high ground
Jerry.
to get rid of Fork early on here, and Ursa can't really do much about the Biotic Orb. He didn't deflect it in the first place, and he can't stop him from slurping away his vitality. So 39% for the Boston Uprising now in this fight, and Alex having a bit of a quiet start, but there's a chance now to at least play from a position where he can safely charge up another blade and hopefully find some value.
It's a good fight for Boston, though. They use Primal. Jerry can hold on to his Death Blossom. He's able to pick off a player at the beginning and able to win the fight.
All right, Jerry TPing now back behind, gets a funnel immediately, goes for a Death Blossom, gets that kill on Master, and Color Hex is able to help out, gets in, removes Popo and the Uprising. They'll spend really just the one ultimate on their fight. Sound Barrier was there too.
Yeah, the Sound Barrier comes through because Hawk uses the Gravitic Flux, so to protect everybody from the Gravitic Flux. This will be one of Atlanta's best chances, though. Shatter, Blade still with the Blade from Ursa. Dogman's going to have the Coalescence, and you probably get a Sound Barrier here too.
There is no tank combination against which Ryan has a better chance of getting a big shatter, but Popo found no one in particular with it. Tries to play over the high ground, it gets nothing. Ursa down early in the fight, but it is traded out now. Boston are down to 1 supporter. Myungbong has to lift in the absence of his Lucio. Fusions is forced to return to the rest of his team and try and play some kind of counter dive, but Edison tracks him from the point to his own team's backline and completes the kill. Atlanta Reign do put the point back in control, and in fairness, they use a fair bit to do so.
Yeah, now Ursa goes over to Reaper. You know you're not going to get another Blade here, most likely. So you play Reaper, force fusions potentially off of this Winston. It's going to be very hard for the Uprising to engage, but with a Graph, you're in a position to just take this for the Uprising. That looks like a Pulse Bomb that was deflected there.
Nicely done by Color Hex, and the Uprising are in a commanding position now. The Atlanta Reign have used all their ultimates. They won't get Coalescence in time, but Color Hex descends, finds 2 with the swipe of 1 blade. The Dogman does get that Coalescence. It's late in the fight, but the Reign need to brawl for the point anyway. He eventually drops now. As you can see, Ursa was forced back by Fusions, and Punk finishes him off. He was very charged. And the Boston Uprising can move into control. It's a switch to Wrecking Ball now for Popo to try and stall this out, Matt, but it's going to be tough.
Yes, he's just going to get beamed down by the Zarya. Color Hex on the Tracer now goes to finish him off, as Edison was the one who triggered OT. Going to have a lot of players back. Hawk with a Gravitic Flux. Can it get anything?
Massa caught in the corner on the point as he tried to contest as low as he could now. The Uprising close to another Sound Barrier if they need it, but it's unlikely that they do. And we often use the term, whole team effort, Matt, a little bit recently, right? Like it's a cop-out, but that was definitely what it was for the Boston Uprising here. They had no real standouts individually, but they played the old economy game really well.
Well, they keep Myungbong alive, and they're able to win some fights. Look at that. So,
I wonder, I mean, look, they're playing the safest possible support combination to, stave off dive.
If you're Atlanta and you come in with a brawl, right? This is what I don't get. You watch Boston really struggle last week, dealing with dive and dealing with aggression, but then you come in and you want to play slow. Like this is giving Boston an opportunity to not have to defend really what they were not good at, and play a game they're probably a little bit more comfortable with. This could be playing exactly into the way that Boston wants it.
Fusions back to the Reinhardt now, as you may expect for Sanctum, with Orisa unable to be selected currently. And again, Color Hex probably just dashes through, tries to harass the backline a little bit. The mortality field already been used here as the Atlanta Reign, the ones that received the aggression from Boston. The Dogman's drone is now down, so fair game here. But the Uprising don't really try and apply any extra pressure with Punk as low as he is, so that window with the Immortality field down isn't really be able to capitalize on here.
No, and they don't really have anybody that can contest this point right now. It looks like Color Hex flew over the top. That'll be Punk actually killing himself with his own Hyper Spheres. Is big Dynamite, lots of damage coming down from the Dynamite from Edison. So We do get a look now on Edison on an Ashe, right? We were wondering who would kind of play this type of role for Atlanta. Now that Baby Bay is gone, do you bring in Sharp? Is it Edison? So at least here early on in map number 1, it is Edison. So Atlanta will actually have the point now.
We actually don't talk about this much, but sometimes the Sigma, it's a little bit hard to avoid taking damage from your own hyperspheres when you're trying to push up, because the enemy Sigma's shield is huge, right? Between you and that Sigma. So sometimes you get splash damage, but Popo is, well, a red splash on the floor after going over the edge from Halo. Nice environmental kill here, and the Boston Uprising quickly regain position on the point.
Also playing this type of style, like, it allows Fusions to play Reinhardt, which is by far and away his best tank. I don't think there's really even a conversation to whether he's better on any of the other ones. That'll be a Bob that comes in from behind. Bob as well here for Boston.
Another environmental punk goes over the edge there to the whip shot of Massa. And Bob is taken down early on, but I think Edison got what he wanted done there. The distraction created was enough for Massa to be able to send a pretty tanky target over the edge here. So the Atlanta Reign move back into control. And these two teams, at least with these compositions, look to be much more evenly matched than we might have expected. And now there's two support ultimates online for Boston.
Yes, Boston will have the sound barrier for when Hawk has the gravitic flux. They're going to leave it with Myungbong using the coalescence. Now the sound barrier comes in, and Ursa's going to blade right after.
He gets the blade. Color Hex was able to find Master there after getting rid of the Immortality field, and the Atlanta Reign, they hope to buy a bit of time with that Batiste ability, but the Uprising is still able to strike a mortal blow before they can recover. And look, the Uprising have way more impactful support ultimates on their side, you could argue, with Coalescence and Sound Barrier, but using them both in one fight leaves their shields down somewhat.
Yes, it is better against the blade as Color Hex catches Edison, so this is actually good, because I was going to say, I do wonder how Boston gets like holds consistently, because their composition's not really designed to just sit in place and just guard the point. With the Lucio in play and the Moira, they have to play aggressive, they have to play brawl. That's why you see they're right up here on the door. Getting that first pick is huge there from Color Hex.
Now Ursa, because of that, and might not just go looking for kills in the backline, but might just have to wait for the Uprising to go forward. Dogman finds Derry though, but it's, yeah, you're going to be Edison losing his bomb, and there's that coalescence to get from Myungbong. You can see how impactful it is when he gets that available, and honestly, the cooldown is quite short. He charges it up awfully fast, and Fusions is now out of the picture, so the Reign should be making a play for the point as quickly as they can.
And Boston doesn't really have much to go about contesting it. I believe you just have Halo on the point. Bob is now going to make his way to the point, try and contest.
And Dogman was just setting up a amplification matrix in case the Uprising were going to try and contest. And
they
it takes a
rally.
while for Atlanta to get the point. They used rally at the end of the fight. So the Uprising might have a chance to just retake things now. Good gravitic flux to start off. That's going to be effective with two players taken down by the 4.
Yeah, and it's big. Atlanta doesn't have the Immortality field or like a rally there to try and keep players alive. And that'll be Boston flipping the point, and it will be Boston who takes map number 1.
How many people?
Mind you,
how many people were buying Atlanta stonks again?
Let me remind you, Atlanta has not won a series where they have lost the map. They have just lost the first map to the Boston Uprising.
Right, now I wouldn't have considered that to really be a thing until Edison breathed life into it. So,
yeah.
And now it seems like the Atlanta Reign are even aware of this. I wonder what kind of toll it takes on a team now.
They've already alluded to that this being a thing, and obviously it's a confidence issue, and there's like pressure of when they lose a map. When you lose a map to the worst team in the league, the pressure's even more, right? So I think this is really bad for Atlanta.
Okay.
Really bad.
But the rest of the map pool definitely implies a little bit more of those dive compositions. Maybe compositions where the Uprising are less comfortable. We know Fusions prefers to play Reinhardt, Color Hex. On the Genji hasn't been as confident so far. So definitely options and opportunities here for a Atlanta team that looked very good against the Valiant when it came to playing dive. So yeah, Atlanta fans, don't be too dejected, but right now the Boston Uprising start the series with a gust of momentum. Can they carry it through, or will it peter out? Stick around, map number 2 is coming up.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Pringles Wavy, Big Crunch, Big Flavor. And by Zip Chair Game, the official chair supplier of the Overwatch League. The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network, T-Mobile. And by State Farm. For auto, home, or renters insurance, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. After map number 1, a shell-shocked Atlanta Reign have some catching up to do. The Boston Uprising start strong and look extremely good, playing the Reinhardt, playing around that Lucio and the Moira. They play aggressive, they brawl, and they look much better doing it.
You didn't mention that it's my shirt.
No, I didn't. Why? Now, why would that be, man? I mean, I think
Because
it's kind of crazy that you're agreeing to wear a shirt, one shirt for the whole day.
When Josh made a cake for Paris, they looked really good and they were successful.
It was a
I made a
garlic
cake.
cake.
I made a cake for Shanghai, and they looked really good after that.
Right.
And now I'm wearing a Boston shirt on the broadcast, and they're undefeated.
Listen, I have to believe it. I bought Atlanta stonks. If they go down, I'm going to be out.
To be fair, I bought their stocks as well.
Yeah, that's right. But you're using.
But I didn't know I was getting this
strategy.
T-shirt though. If I was getting this T-shirt, I would have potentially have changed my decision.
But you hedge your bets, right? You know, you can buy stonks from both, and then you actually don't really end up gaining much money. But you don't really lose any either. It's like a dumbbell strategy.
Right.
know.
Yeah. Exactly. I agree with you.
You know all about dumbbells.
I
right?
know a ton about dumbbells. If there's anyone who knows the thing about working out, it's me.
At least you're not posting thirst traps like the rest of the tier 7 house. Let's have a look at some of the numbers here for the Atlanta Reign. We know they love to play sort of the Sigma Orisa based compositions. This is a time where that is harder to do, and they love the Tracer in there as well, as that's where we've seen Edison really go to so far. So I think it's safe to say that the current hero pool doesn't necessarily afford them that same ability to play that same composition. Still, you'd think with the hero pool, of these individual players that they wouldn't have too many problems. I really think it's more Boston looking comfortable on this setup than them looking bad.
Yes, Boston does look comfortable in this type of setup, and I think that Atlanta is playing this right into what Boston would probably love to do with the Reinhardt in the mix. Like it's Fusion's wheelhouse, and let's see what they go with on this next map though. On Numbani, like you mentioned, we haven't seen Numbani in a while. There's a lot of opportunities to dive here. Popo stays in, so we'll see if they bring out Winston at all.
I believe in Kiwi Jesus. Let's see what Colorhex has. Maybe
Is that his new nickname?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah,
I wasn't aware of that one.
Look, Jesus was a shepherd, and I'm telling you, there are more sheep than people in New Zealand, probably. So it fits. It really does.
To be fair, I'll never probably go to New Zealand, so I would never be able to fact check that.
I've never met a Kiwi that hasn't had a sheep as a pet at some point or another.
Really?
So, yep.
That's got to be a lie.
It's definitely true. The Uprising
I smell a lie here.
The Atlanta Reign, though. Okay, so they do go with this setup here now.
Yeah.
Like I said, we were critical when we first started to see Winston Zaya in Asia, but look, I think that the way that this map is set up, it kind of makes sense. You know, Popo at least gets a little bit of charge early on. Hawk, it's just really easy for Zaya to farm charge, but this used to be a map that under no circumstances would Zaya be played because, you know, with all the verticality, she has had issues before just trying to navigate that and continue to get down here.
It provides a little bit of extra coverage for the Winston diving in. Right, there's a lot that can stun, burst out of Winston, certain types of compositions. As the Boston Uprising on offense here, Jerry will play the Sombra, just go out. It's probably spot check. So Color Hex will go Genji. They stay on the Sombra. This is an interesting look from Boston.
What is Jerry hoping for?
No, he's gonna switch.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Ashe and the Genji, which is something we saw a ton.
And they have a ton of damage to be able to burst down somebody like Popo with the Discord orbs coming in. You see him already at such low HP.
Ursta gets hit with the dynamite there, so Dogman has to just sort of focus on him for the time being, which means Popo gets a little bit less attention. And there it is. There's no shields with a Winston Zarya setup, and Hitscan is perfect against it. Still, Edison is able to fire back across the breach at Jerry and get the trade at the very least. Color Hex has to play careful, and there's a Zenyatta in this Boston composition, so they need to, you know, be I guess, sequential or incremental in how they move up.
I mean, you lose Punk and you lose Hawk here, and you lose Masa at the start of this. As Fusion now finds Edison up on the high ground, and Boston's just going to be able to take point A. And I'm so confused by this, Mitch, and I don't think you can exactly play like Tracer Genji here on Numbani the entire time. But like maybe on this point, right, you can switch to it and try and do it against Boston, because like I mentioned, when we saw Atlanta at their best last week, it was when they were aggressive. Route 66 against the Florida Mayhem, the map that they win, they started to get aggressive with the Winston, the Tracer, and the Genji dive. The other maps, when they play passive, they lose. This, I feel like they're coming out, they're trying to play passive against Boston, who that's what Boston wants. They don't want to have to deal with this dive constantly.
Look at that, Jerry, completely unruffled by Poco trying to dive in. The Uprising, it was finally the Atlanta Reign wanted to go aggressive, but it was just Poco, really. It was, I don't think there was much coordination there at all.
No, it's, that's what the Zenyatta brings in this, is Popo goes in, he gets discorded, he's dead instantly. Especially now that you can't armor up somebody extra with the Brigida armor packs. Dogman, it makes it very difficult for him at range to be able to heal.
Bob goes in, a bit of damage against Master, but most of that be shielded. Even a shield bash invested in Bob.
They lose Popo. There's nobody there to heal him. I mean, look at where the position that he's in, even with Primal.
Why are you diving when the rest of your backline is busy dealing with such a threat there? There seems to be a huge disconnect for the Atlanta Reign right now, and Popo's feeding.
Said the Boston Uprising may be able to take point B. This will be the bomb from Edison that goes in. Blade comes through here. So Boston's just rolling them.
That is brutal. Again, Popo returns to the fray very quickly as Wrecking Ball, but again, gets discorded, gets into the backline, and gets completely ruined. The Atlanta Reign do not seem comfortable playing this style, and Boston is saying, okay, you can come to us, that's fine, because only half of your team is actually, engaging with us. We are just, using this in the auto Discord. Jerry's just coach gunning backward. We are ready to receive these dives, these haphazard attempts from you.
Atlanta will win a fight here, though, or at least they should, in theory. The grab from Hawk should be enough to push them over the top. This will be an Ant Matrix here from Halo. This is actually just kind of forcing them back around the corner, so just trying to buy a little bit more car progress here for Boston.
All right, well, Boston,
they know there's a grab in the mix. They don't want to play this.
Here, yeah, Atlanta don't necessarily win the fight quite yet. They're just setting up a little more here. Dogman at least has that Ant Matrix.
If they don't go, though, they potentially allow them to build up to Transcendence.
Okay, Hawk this quarter though. Popo went in with a barrier initially, and okay, they get rid of Jerry, so the Reign find the fight that they were looking for here, and I think the Uprising's focus was just a little bit split there between both Hawk and Popo. That looks better though. They go more aggressive. They still lose a couple players at the back end of the fight, but they're able to stave off the Uprising for now.
That's positive for Atlanta. So you win that fight, you use the Ant Matrix, you can hold on a grab plus Blade. Halo now will play Brigitte, so this tells you that they're a little bit worried now about the dive coming in onto Myungbong. So play the Brig, get the Brig in the mix swinging, trying to protect the Zen in the backline.
Update for you as well. Last time someone on Twitter went to New Zealand, there was 10 sheep per person. There you go. It wasn't all alive.
Yeah, and the drop bears were going after the people, right?
That's why there aren't as many sheep in Australia, I guess.
Yeah,
Jerry
the drop bears.
Tries to go for a bot to make something happen here, but the Reign are able to disengage, and now they can play with this Graviton. They have an immortality kill the Reign, so even if the Uprising try and get aggressive past that, they can't get any kills. And Boston have lots of fusions here, so they maybe just try and hold this corner. I don't think they want to be forced out of this underpass all over again. And so far, so good. They're able to maintain this position.
And I wonder if Fusions, maybe after Primal, they consider bringing in Reinhardt and play a little bit more brawly rush against this. Try and punish Popo yet again.
All right. Fusions jumps to the side there. You see him go into the side move. He's chased by Popo with that Primal Rage. So Fusions doesn't want to part with his Primal Rage right now. But he might have an opportunity now. Edison actually pushed into the side room. And Jerry gets rid of Master. So the Uprising just able to bait the Reign into an investment here. Obviously, probably just as bad an investment as buying Atlanta Stonks right now. The SEC is going to be on speed dial to me right now. I could be in trouble for inflation. Popo goes down to Jerry, though.
And it's almost impossible for them to keep him alive. Like, when he turns the corner there, they have an Ant Matrix, and he's got a Zarya bubble. But between that and the Discord, and he just gets burned down so quick.
Urster. Oh, okay, the coach gun was too early from Jerry. Urster's able to get the Dragon Blade after being knocked back and used the 3 dash to close the distance. And now he just sits, he doesn't have to do too much. That's a speculative transcendence.
Plus Blade, they're going to use Blade with it.
Go forward now. Color Hexton try and go for the aggressive Blade, backed up by the healing, but Punk was the completionist there. He gets 2 with that Gravitic Flux, but without Fusions and Halo especially, no more progress to be made for the Uprising here. And it looks like, Matt, the Reign are getting a lot more value out of Hawk, especially now they're able to play on this series of corners. This is where Xayah starts to come into her own now. Less of a high ground issue, more of these narrow chokes that the Uprising have to go through one after another.
And Boston, they probably felt like they were going to be able to win that. Close it out as they had the Transcendence plus Blade, then they use a Gravitic Flux on top, and use all those ultimates in combination, and to now win that fight, that's brutal. And now with a minute to go, they're in a lot of trouble.
All right, but right now...
It's like a little solo... Oh, no, he's got 2 teammates with him. It's like the flank rally hero. It's like, it's quite interesting, but...
Yeah, Haley was only providing that rally to 2 other players at the time, so the Uprising don't get much value off of that initial healing from the rally, maybe from that armor, but still, Halo looking to start something up, and now it's Boston that look a little bit disjointed here. Dogman goes for an Amp Matrix, that'll slow the Uprising down, as does the Bob, but eventually the Reign are going to have to stand their ground properly. Jerry hoping for some early damage on Dogman to get him low. The Discord Orb was already there, that could have been devastating. Dynamite thrown in. Hawk is low. Getting rid of Hawk would be massive here. He's getting close to another Graviton Surge. Throws this skill to Urster, who goes in with the Blade. Great opening there for the Atlanta Reign now, and Urster's able to find 3 Immortality Fields thrown out just to make it nice and clean on the Atlanta Reign. Okay, looking like a different team here. Great recovery from Atlanta, and they'll prevent the Uprising map from finishing the map.
Oh, it's a huge defensive stand there from the Atlanta Reign. I mean, they did not look good at all on point A, and then from once the payload started moving through the streets phase to point B. To be able to get a hold without Boston completing the map is massive, because it looked like Boston was going to be able to complete with a really good time.
And this composition that Atlanta play, right, I feel like there is some risk associated with it. You gain yourself, the bubble from Xayah that you can use at will to sort of protect either Popo or Urster, but you lack shielding, static shielding from incidental damage that could come from like an enemy Ashe or something similar. Right? That's why Master actually has sort of 5 deaths right now. Quite the most on the field, because even though he holds the shield, he's not always holding right click. He needs to be using the flail sometimes, and you have to line of sight. You have to LOS the Reign to avoid just taking a ton of poke damage.
Yes, we'll see Boston defense first, so it looks like you'll see Halo on Mercy here, potentially. Mercy's really effective with Ashe. Ashe with the damage boost.
Really defensive,
it's,
right?
Tremendous, yeah. This is an extremely defensive style composition. What Atlanta decides to do will be interesting here. Do you play Ryan Zarya and try and like just rush up through the high ground? I don't think so. Like, Winston's so good here with verticality.
I mean, the Reign hope that the Uprising go all in and commit, right? But Boston have plenty of tools for disengage, right? Fusions, there's no way Fusions is going to walk into a Ryan Zarya and just hold mouse 1 and just hang around. So
no.
The Reign want to force the Uprising to stay. Now, if Edison can hack Fusions, he doesn't have a choice, right? He can't go anywhere. So a lot depends on Edison finding the correct target here to pressure.
Edison goes McCree.
They're playing for this high ground balcony 100% now. And to be fair, the Uprising kind of have to give it to them. They can't just put 6 people up there and try and brawl.
It'll almost look like on Volskaya Industries, where the one team on offense goes like left side high ground, and then the Winston has to kind of juggle and just play up and down constantly. So you see Fusions, he'll go up, he'll get some damage, then go back down. They just want to deny this door. They don't want to allow them to get through the doorway.
Now, eventually the Reign are going to make some progress, so it's actually going to come down to Jerry to see if he can really pressure the Atlanta Reign and prevent them from actually moving out here, like force them back into their Batiste's healing radius inside this corridor.
Let's say having the Mercy here really pays off, right? For the extra damage when the players are coming through.
The dynamite damage as well is pretty huge. So Edison needs to try and get some space somehow. Okay, Popo finds Byunbong. That's not what the Uprising were looking for there. A key vulnerability in the defensive setup has been exploited. Now Jerry's going to come back in. Remember, Byunbong just got resurrected, so it's actually a 5v5 right now, and the Uprising play the disengage, re-engage game so well.
Well, that's the problem with having McCree. Like when we saw Edison up on the high ground, sure, you can get that first kill, but did you see where Jerry was playing, where he was able to pick him off from? He was so far underneath the bridge on the backside, more towards Boston's spawn, that there's no way McCree is taking Ash in a 1v1 with a Mercy pocket from that range. It's just not possible.
And this is what I worry about Atlanta now, is because the Uprising have demonstrated that they actually have a really elegant solution to playing this composition. Atlanta switched to Winston now, Matt. Why?
And Boston doesn't have to invest any ultimates there either. And I think they're going to go Winston because it's a completely different strategy. They're bringing in the Tracer as well. Probably trying to take advantage of this high ground. Jump on the Mercy, jump on the Zen. Pretty vulnerable supports.
So instead of now using the platform to fight from for Atlanta, they're just going to try and dive and get rid of the Uprising because they know they want to make it so they can't disengage. Atlanta Reign take the fight to them. It's a trade though. Popo goes down, but Color Hex has been removed for the Uprising there after we try to go for a blade. The point's being captured right now. Punk's a little on his own here. He's going to prolong his, I guess, high ground status with that kinetic grasp. Hawk's forced out of line of sight, and somehow Ursi got caught by a Grecian here. This Graviton Surge doesn't look good at all.
It doesn't keep them off of the point.
They have a Transcendence as well. Yes, it was supposed to maybe drag the Uprising away from the point now, but Boston look like they are in control.
All right, so Boston gets yet another hold here. 90% on the point for Atlanta. So Atlanta will have to back out. They'll have to regroup. They'll have Blade and they'll have Pulse Bomb here. No defensive ultimate for the Boston Uprising. So as long as this Blade is good from Erster, you think it's a point take. You only need one tick. Watch Jerry with the Bob again, though. Yeah. Potentially the Bob on the point to stall things out.
Can Edison get to this high ground and get an easy stick on the Ash or something similar, right? He's not in position to join Popo right now. You'll notice that. Popo's up there with just Erster, so it's not a full dive. Color Hex has the line of sight here on the payload. Look at him just keeping his head down now. Really great presence of mind from Halo, though, to give him just a little bit of healing. Now he dashes to his backline, and the Uprising is showing such a great sustain game here. Edison has to push in, but that kinetic grasp makes it hard. Possum has to connect. Erster has to blade, though. So eventually the Reign have to leverage pretty much all of their offensive ultimates to get that 1-10.
The Blade with no Transcendence is really what seals the deal. Boston, they will lose their point A defense, although it was pretty strong, and now Atlanta will start to get the cart going as Hawk will play Diva. So this is what we saw Atlanta do successfully last week. Play aggressive, behind the Tracer and the Genji, with the Winston, get good dives. Now it's back onto Boston. Can they protect Myungbong? Like, how do they adjust from last week's failure?
And the strategy changes now for Boston. Before they would disengage, they give some cap progress, but they could come back and fight.
Right.
Now, if they disengage, they're giving up cart progress. So they cannot play that same in and out kind of style with the same level of ease remotely.
Oh!
You heard the melee there as well. He finishes Edison off with a very quick combo, and yeah, well, he got caught sleeping.
Yeah, Genji is perfectly balanced, guys.
Yep.
Nothing wrong there. Don't look.
I mean,
the right click is so strong right now.
Slight improvement to his shuriken damage, per shuriken. The decrease in spread doesn't matter there because he was right up close.
No, and it'll be the rally early here from Masa. So Fusions goes in. Maybe he'll Primal here to keep it alive.
Oh, look at this. Popo baits out the Primal Rage by diving, but actually just dives to the high ground and not into the backline there. That's very clever. So Atlanta, it's almost like a feint, the way that they make the dive happen. Here's the trade, though. Jerry goes down, but Dogman's been removed. The Reign have the damage, but they don't want a long fight if they can help it.
The Transcendence is it's like a second late there. They're trying to keep Color Hex alive when he's using the Blade.
Discord Orb on Popo, though, seals the deal. Cart is being contested right now on the point, but Hawk is probably pretty charged up at this point in the fight, and yeah, Punk just gets lasered on down. Hawk, discorded, doesn't have a personal barrier right now, but is able to play out in the open with that immortality field deployed towards him. And nice work by Myungbong, by the way, making it so Hawk can't actually push up with this charge.
Well, Halo as well. Halo able to stall the point out on the brig for a very long time. The Bob comes in, but I don't think this will be good enough for Boston. It'll be Erster with a Blade. Edison pushing on forward should be... Oh, no, Myungbong takes him out, but he'll die to one of the other players soon. So Atlanta keeps the payload going, keeps their hopes of winning the map alive.
Hawk with 10 final blows right now. Zaya making quite a difference here as well. Hawk providing a large amount of his team's damage here and playing very safely there. You saw how he had to sort of line of sight away and play around his bubble cooldowns as much as possible. But now the Reign probably feeling more confident about going aggressive. There's no Mercy Ash set up here. There's no sort of
And
quasi
Mitch,
bunker for the Uprising.
Boston giving them this much space is not good.
Dangerous.
If Mung
Yeah.
doesn't get the Transcendence, this is really dangerous. He's going to get it now. He should be able to use it, potentially keep players alive. Oh, through the grab, but not really. It's going to be a Pulse Bomb coming on through, taking out Fusions.
Transcendence now from Yonbong here. It doesn't look like it's going to be enough, though. It doesn't do much to burst damage, that's for sure. And the Atlanta Reign come up with the goods here on Numbani. They push through, and it looks like Boston struggled a little bit with the transition of play style from playing around point A to then playing the payload game, Matthew. They had to actually start committing properly instead of, disengaging, re-engaging.
It's what I said in regards to the style of play in map number 1. When Atlanta was playing aggressive and they were diving teams last week, they looked good. Boston was not able to defend that really at all last week. So why not come in here and do it? They switched to the Tracer and Genji, and as soon as they do that, they're able to take point A. They're able to move the cart effortlessly, pretty much, from A to B, and then just complete the map, just a match where Boston ended to win it. So I think after halftime, you're looking at Atlanta to come out with more dive-style setups.
And this might be the match where they shake the monkey off their back, no pun intended. They still have a chance, of course, to clinch the series here. It would be their first series win in which they'd lost a map. Plenty to talk about here as well, especially how these teams are actually being, forced on, especially hybrid maps, to showcase different compositions and styles. Let's hear what our experts have to say about it at the game break, and then after that, we'll be back the second half of Atlanta versus Boston.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League. Hello and welcome to our game break presented by Cheese Grooves. Zoe here, joined by Costa and Reinforce. It's currently 1 apiece between the Atlanta Reign and the Boston Uprising. Now, Boston is looking incredible good in that first map, so let's talk about all the action unfolding on Nepal. We saw them taking a little bit of a different approach, Costa, than what we saw in previous games last week.
Yeah, I've always said that my biggest issue with Boston is that when they play this very, I guess, complicated style, they seem to not have the team coordination. But on Nepal, we see them go towards a very simple win condition. You're playing Reinhardt, you're playing the Reaper, we're going to run at them. And you see that they actually play this very well. They seem to trade aggro very well, and the win condition is very simple for them to understand. And they really overwhelmed Atlanta with the way they played it. We saw them play a mirror on this Sanctum in the end, and they actually played it very well. They played the Lucio Moira, actually, that was the difference. And they understood when they needed to go. They used their ultimates effectively, and Atlanta did not. And it really got them that first map. And it was a good look because, as I've always said, they were showing confidence. They were showing a willingness to be the aggressors, to make the plays, and it really paid off for them. Then we went into the second map, and as I said, it got a little bit more complicated, got a little bit more convoluted, and that's where they really started to struggle.
Yeah, but they were still pretty one-dimensional. It seemed to be working out for them at first because we saw them slow down a little bit. I think that Punk had a lot of work done on that Sigma. He played really well when they slowed things down. And then also you saw Jerry, who played Ashe, actually also sat back, played a bit reactionary, and got a lot of value. Jerry found a lot of first picks in these teamfights on Numbani. And it looked pretty good for the Boston Uprising. They were very close to a point they hold. So combine Jerry's Ashe with Punk's Sigma, and it looked pretty good for the Boston Uprising as well when they were slowing things down.
Do you guys feel that Boston maybe played a little bit too obvious reactionary and didn't take the initiative enough?
Yeah, I think this was the issue that they ran into on the third point. It felt like Atlanta, because they were playing this Monkey Zaya style, they felt like they were the ones that needed to engage, but Boston was playing this incredibly smart reactionary style where they were literally just waiting for Pokpo to jump in and then punishing. Unfortunately, Atlanta sort of caught wind of this style, and they just stopped going, and that's why we saw a massive sort of stalemate on this third point, where everyone's just sort of standing and shooting, but nothing's really happening. Atlanta really making smart decisions and adaptations on the fly of how they need to win the match.
Yeah.
Now, you just mentioned the Zarya, and I felt like both of you, whilst we watched that game, had opinions on that. Reinforce, are you a fan of Hawk on that Zarya, or at least in this team composition?
I think it can work on like point B and stuff, but on point A specifically, we saw him struggle. And that's part of why also we saw Punk do really well on the Sigma, on Numbani, because, you know, they were slowing things down and you get so much value from the accretions, from the shield spam with Sigma. But then the Zarya, when you're playing slow, doesn't net the same kind of value when you're not really engaging. So you see the stats themselves. This is Punk Sigma stats on Numbani, and 9 accretion stuns. Damage is also up there, final blows, etc. So the stats are there for Punk, and I think he did a lot of stuff right. But that also plays into the compositions, where I think Hawk had a lot less value on the Zarya, because I think that overall the Boston Uprising's tank duo looked a lot better. But overall, not a big fan of the Zarya on point A. But then when you start going aggressive, as the Atlanta Reign did towards the tail end of Numbani, that's where you really see it start to shine.
And that is going to be displayed as well in our Crunch Time presented by Cheese Grooves. Earthstar and Genji took some time to warm up, but once he popped, he popped.
Yeah, and I mean, he's still adjusting to this role with Baby Bay retiring from the league. I think that Ursa is going to get a lot more playtime, especially in a Genji meta. But we need to see Ursa kind of warm up for this season, right? Because he hasn't had a lot of playtime. He played mostly Mei, but now it's a Genji meta, so we see him on that role. It looked a bit too passive at first, and he didn't net a ton of value, specifically on Nepal. But then we saw here on Numbani, he started out pretty slow, but then he started to get a lot of value from his Dragon Blades. Very methodical, Costa. You were a fan of these Dragon Blades.
Yeah, I on the first map on Nepal, his Dragon Blades almost felt super forced. It felt like he thinks he needs to use the blade, and he was just going in and getting punished every time. While in Numbani, he understood his win condition of every blade he's pulling. There was one really smart one that we just saw there, where he solo blades against Jerry when they're down 5v6, because he knows all he has to do is kill Jerry there. If he kills Jerry, the fight is pretty much over. So great, smart initiative by by Ursa there. On the other hand, I do want to talk about Colorhex, who seems to be getting almost zero value from all of his blades. He's not recognizing those win conditions. He has the blade, he thinks he needs to pull it, and he thinks he needs to tranquilate everyone. I want to see smarter play from him if Boston is going to pull this one over the line.
All right, the teams are ready, so we're about to send it back. Reinforce, I know you had some thoughts on the next map, so very, very quickly, we're heading to Anubis. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, really quick. It's going to be tough for Boston. They have a 6% win rate on Assault, so good luck.
Oh, no.
Good luck. And with that, we're heading over to Anubis, and for all the action, we send it back to our wonderful casters, Mr. X and Uber. The Overwatch League is brought to you by Cheez-It Grooves. Deep flavor, deep crunch. It's a mind crunch. The Overwatch League is brought to you by HyperX. Unleash your style, unleash your fury with HyperX Fury Memory. And by Coca-Cola, the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
Makes the most sense.
I mean, R.I.P. McGravy.
Okay.
Double support ultimates here for the Florida Mayhem, but now that the Transcendence is gone, oh, that's a huge stick.
아니 한타는 그래도 어떻게 이기면서 가고 있는데
네. Lorraine again to go to the point. Ursa needs to make it work with the blade, and he's got two so far. Make it three. Finally breaking through the Florida Mayhem now. That's classy. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. After our halftime break, it is a tied series between the Boston Uprising and the Atlanta Reign. Boston looked good early in the series in that first map, and also early on Numbani, but they get figured out by Atlanta. All of a sudden, Atlanta stopped recklessly throwing themselves into the fray, and as a result, they managed to get themselves the win in map number 2.
Well, let's see if Atlanta can actually continue to do that throughout the series. It's an adjustment that we saw them make for one map against the Florida Mayhem. Are they able to do it for the entire series and get a win here against Boston? Because this also would be the first series we see Atlanta win with them losing a map, which I think would be a huge hurdle to overcome.
Right, I guess, at least psychologically, because the more you say something, the more likely it is to be real, right? And more and more this kind of idea, which let's be clear, there's no logical basis, for this actually being a thing, i.e. not winning a series unless it's 3-0. But the moment the players themselves start talking about it, you know that they're starting to think about it as well, and it actually sticks in their mind.
Yeah, it's like spoken into existence, right? Where we notice the trend, the stats team noticed the trend, everybody in the community started to talk about it, Atlanta probably got word of it, and then it just kind of becomes real.
No doubt about it. And now, of course, heading into our next map in the series, there's definitely some history recorded by these two teams as well, and the composition you probably should expect it to be a little bit different. Matt Marcel, obviously one of our producers who provides a lot of the stats and puts together research, is pointing it out. Boston actually have a 6.3% win rate on assault maps, so let's just give them a little bit of credit there and make sure that we employ a decimal point when it is relevant. Matthew?
Well, 6% win rate is not ideal.
I would say, but look, the Uprising have managed to draw on this particular map before.
But
so
they've also never played an assault map with me wearing their t-shirt, so you never know.
Right, and now the more times you say that, the more likely it'll be that Boston only sort of win when you're wearing that shirt.
Right. Well, look,
is it just you or is it everybody?
I'll wear this shirt every day if I could. When they sent me the email, it's like, hey, you want to wear this t-shirt? I was like, is that different than any other day with me on the broadcast? I'm always in a t-shirt with some kind of jacket over it. It's just removing the jacket. And
I don't normally wear a lot of red, to be honest, even though it is my favorite color. So, this is a nice change. I quite enjoy this.
Well, you wear all the crazy stuff.
Well, here's something that most people don't know, is that actually day to day, I don't wear very flashy things. I just do it on broadcast.
Ah, right.
Yeah. No,
I get it. See, you feel like sometimes that I suck up a lot of the attention, so to get some of it back, you like to wear a lot of the flashy stuff. I get it now. I
have so many ways of trying to divert attention to me, and I use them all maliciously. I grew up with a younger brother 11 months apart, so don't worry. I know many ways of getting the spotlight on me. Don't you worry. Sometimes I just say made-up words.
And we all know. We all know that. Yep.
Yep. It's listen, it's not a terrible way to live either. And now, as far as the people around me, I can't really speak for how they feel, but yes, okay, so it's actually a 6.7% win rate on assault maps here. So they have one win, basically, with a couple of draws.
Boston on offense, the color hex Genji, Jerry on Ashe. Again, at Atlanta, they'll be playing their Ashe as well, with Edison on the Ashe. How do you think he's fared so far, by the way? Didn't really discuss it that much.
No, well, I mean, I don't know. I think he's been pretty darn reasonable across the series. I don't know. I mean,
it looks fine. Like, I know he's connected with some big dynamites. He's gotten some nice pickoffs.
Maybe a little early because there's been so much happening outside of that sort of Ashe play, right? Especially when I think the front lines have been the most attention-generating part of this matchup, just because of how it informs the pace of play in dive. So we'll keep eyes on it. Right now, the Uprising have pushed on up here. They've actually managed to take the high ground. So the Reign are now trying to play sort of an in-and-out sort of disengaged style of play.
And look at Myungbong compared to Dogman. He's already got the Ant Matrix. Dogman at 40%, and they'll drop the Ant Matrix now down on the bridge. Two shots from Jerry and a Dogman. That'll be 2 kills for Jerry here. This Boston should be able to take this first point off the back of this.
Jerry's looking pretty slick on the Ashe so far. And the Atlanta Reign, I mean, everything kind of gets turned on its head now when you're playing Winston in defense, right? You do have to give ground in order to actually
How many players does Jerry need to kill to take the point? This is 4 now.
Yeah,
he got Popo extremely low.
Just It's just 4, I think, yeah. Edison now is able to pick him off and still the Rainwater contested. Why not? I mean, you've got players that are staggered here, so you may as well try and burn a little bit of clock. That's 2 ticks, though, for the Uprising. The Rain probably want to drop in one more time. Color Hexo deals with Edison up on that high ground here, and okay, Boston, fair play. Looking pretty darn good. I'd say the Atlanta Rain look a little bit unsure about where it is that they want to sort of commit or sort of stand or hold their ground, right?
And Myungbong's going to get another Amp Matrix here rather quickly, especially if they decide to like push left side, kind of just play that choke for a little bit.
Farm up Batiste heal from Dynamite and poke damage.
Yeah, if you go left side here and you kind of go in, trying to go around
96,
exactly where
100.
he's going. Yep, yeah, you're going to be able to farm this up so quick. And then they can come around the corner. You can drop an Amp Matrix. You can allow Jerry to shoot through it. Fusions can go in deep.
You force Atlanta out of line of sight immediately.
Yeah, yep, here it is.
And everyone back in the hidey hole. They're still a little bit too slow, though. Bob gets set to the point. He'll start to contest here, and the Uprising will play from a very safe position. Punk just going to try and turn around now and deal with Popos in the back line. He takes a face full of damage, but is able to get back into Smash. Maybe critical now as he returns with a little bit of Primal Rage left, but where's the rest of Atlanta? It is literally just Popo here inside this small room. No one able to help him out.
Oh, and get Urser back in the mix, and it'll be a grab that comes through. Urser with a blade. That's into the Immortality field. Now he deals with it. He's able to get 2 players with the blade.
Looks like he'll get Halo on a dash through finish off here. Yes, and the Atlanta Rain get the cleanup. That fight though, man, let's backtrack a little bit because it looked awfully strange to me. Atlanta were waiting for Boston to commit to the point properly because they had a grab and blade ready to go. So why is Popo trying to knock them out onto the point? Why is he going in on his own with Primal there? Why doesn't he just wait out of line of sight?
Well, I think he had used Primal a little bit beforehand. He was around the corner and got pressured out, and then he decided to Primal. And at that point, he just push in, see if he can get a kill, maybe stall the push out even more. But Atlanta, they decided to wait on the point, get the grab and the blade, and well, it was to buy time as well for Ursa to come back off spawn.
What do Atlanta do now without a grab? Can they let Boston walk onto the point with the Reinhardt composition?
Boston is going to try the same thing this time, but play even a little bit slower. You'll have the Amp Matrix yet again. The Myungbong getting that right now. It's going to heal everybody up. You may end up getting a rally out of this. But they're going to have pretty much the same stock of ultimates here on the left-hand side.
But Boston do not have a Zenyatta here. So for Popo, even though he doesn't really want to dive a Reinhardt, he doesn't have to worry so much about Discord. It's just the shield bash that could be a problem. Jerry, there's an Amp Matrix there. He throws the Dynamite through that, but he actually doesn't get any connections with it. That would have done a lot of tick damage after getting amplified by the Batiste ultimate. And this is Boston playing it slow here.
They didn't want to play out in the open there because you also had an Amp Matrix come in from Dogman. That'll be Bob used here from Jerry. Gets taken out rather quickly. Looks like Punk is searching for somebody here in the back of the point.
Here's a blade now for Color Hex to the low ground. He's looking for Ursa, who pops deflect immediately now. Master, great response here from Atlanta, to be fair, just to try and deal with the Genji. And now Popo transitions pretty seamlessly to the point with a Primal Rage.
A big kill there.
Yep, doesn't need the blade. Finishes off Ursa the old-fashioned way. It looks like there was a shield bash assist potentially from Halo. But Edison gets involved. The Brig is now down for Boston. And they're kind of running out of gas a little bit here, playing off the point. They still have the Reinhardt to work with. Hawk is going to grab directly down, and Dogman gets that Immortality field. So the Rain is shrugging off a lot of Boston's damage, and Boston look better when they get to wait for the Rain to come to them.
An Amp Matrix here as they're still trying to fight this. Fusions with a Shatter, what?
Huge turnaround. Fusion's still pretty low though, so he takes a brief breather. But Myungbong's going to be able to keep him topped up, but Jerry pursues Popo to the ends of the earth now. Tries to use Bob to get a knock up on Hawk to keep him off the point, and it works.
Atlanta was caught so off guard, and it makes total sense. Like, why you're down like 3 players pretty much. Halo's coming back on Lucio. Why would you invest in Amp Matrix? A Fire Strike through it gets one. The Shatter gets another one. Crazy there from the Boston Uprising as they complete the map a minute and 41 in the bank. Wow.
Okay, so this is extremely chaotic, the way that these rounds are flowing. The Boston Uprising there, they look like they're disengaging, right? Now, in fairness, they're playing a pretty slow-moving composition, but they were able to lull Atlanta into a false sense of security by looking like they were trying to get out of point B, and then they turn around on a dime, throw an Amp Matrix and a Fire Strike down, and they get rid of the enemy Batiste. So there goes the lion's share of their healing, and then they turn it up a gear and push towards the point. Really impressive. I don't know how the calling structure actually allows for such flexibility, but it was very impressive to see that in action from Boston. So credit to Boston, because in the past, right, they were actually a team who had some really nice set plays on this map, right? A lot of bait plays with Reinhardt back in previous metas. That did not look premeditated. It looked like it was on the fly, and it really worked to catch Atlanta off guard.
So now we'll see what Atlanta decides to do on offense. Potentially coming in here with the Tracer Genji setup. This is what we like to see from the Atlanta Reign thus far. So what have you realized, you know, in terms of difference from Popo to Gator? It seems like Popo very comfortable playing the Winston, but I haven't really seen like a huge difference in terms of play that would result you in like because what happens if you know, Arisa comes back next week? Do we just go back to Gator? Like I don't know if there was.
Yes. I think Popo was far more inclined to be aggressive.
Yes.
I think we've sort of seen it over the last few maps here. Atlanta's issue wasn't now with their Winston and Tracer matching up, and their Winston being left out at sea. Hawk gets rid of Halo early here though, so I mean, look, you've already managed to drag Boston's Brigitte out of position now, and Punk is completely on his own here.
Yep, they're already down fusions as well. So you lose your main tank, you lose your break. I believe Halo like just kind of gets down from off of the bridge, and they're not able to get him back up. They end up using the Immortality field to try and keep him alive, but it's still not good enough. That'll be the Atlanta Reign in one of the faster times, taking point A. Now 5 minutes and 50 to get the second point.
Yeah, it's kind of both teams that I think have struggled a little bit with their positioning, or at least having like, you know, dealing with having players forcibly isolated there. I mean, Punk looked like he was completely out at sea, but it was because he was bisected away from the rest of his team. Neither squad really wants to play together as six here, and it can hurt them now. The Uprising will maintain the Winston for the time being on the point. Keep an eye on Punk and Calahex, who both have key ultimates, and there's a Bob available. So that kill, that's so big for Boston. Now they sit, they don't have to spend ultimates, and the Atlanta Reign have to slowly try and draw these out of Boston.
You saw Edison go in with a double blink past the shield, and he was really trying to put pressure on Jerry to potentially even get like a pulse bomb out of that, because he's at like 97%. Where you get a pulse bomb out of that, maybe you're able to get a stick, and then the dive comes through after. The biggest thing here is we see a little bit of a switch up here from Boston Uprising supports, right? We usually see the Batiste being played by Myungbong, and then like a Brig or something being played by Halo. Halo played the Batiste, and Myungbong plays the Zen, because they know they need a Transcendence to deal with like Blade, they need it to deal with Grav. Right. They have to make that change.
It's more pressure for Popo, but they have to be careful of Edison now. It's less risky for Edison to hit the backline. There's far less peel to deal with a Tracer. So maybe not much respect to Edison being given there, but yep, the aforementioned able to find 2 kills in that fight. And
that was really poor by Boston.
Look, I think Zen Batiste is greedy in this particular setup. I think you're trying to make it harder for the enemy's Winston to do much, and look, I think you definitely are going way more damage oriented in that setup. I could be wrong here, but I've heard Jake call it the same thing in the past.
Yeah, I think that's you can definitely make that argument. I think it's true. I think the main issue there, and I've seen it a few times in this series thus far, the combination for Boston of Blade with the Gravitic Flux, they tried it there, and it didn't work. We haven't really seen it result in anything big throughout the series. Where if that's what you want to do, give yourself a better opportunity to make it happen, because they use it in the small alleyway there, and they just throw an Immortality field down, and you don't get anything with either of those ultimates. I don't really have to tell you, I think, to use 2 ultimates and not get anything when the other team just has to use a cooldown.
Yes.
Not even an ultimate,
field.
just an Immortality field is extremely bad. So maybe they need to rethink that line of thinking in terms of comboing those 2 ults together.
I saw a really interesting post, actually. I think it was from Linksa, about how to deal with Dragon Blading Genjis when you're playing Brig Batiste. And he drew it in paint. It was actually hilarious. It should be on his Twitter feed. And it basically pointed out that like there is a lot you can do to stave off a Blading Genji. And this is not considering, obviously, the Gravitic Flux that we're talking about there, but you know, it's tough for Genji to get in, and it's even it gets easier, right, when you get rid of the Brig here. But Boston has switched back now to Brig Batiste setup, and the Atlanta Reign are going to go with that too. Ursta,
This is so free.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, what's to stop him from doing that, right? Color Hex needs to do due diligence to go up there and just sort of, you know, trade some shurikens with him, maybe?
Yeah, it was the same thing that when we saw Super last week, and we kind of did a review, that Josh and some of the other guys were worried about, is that Super didn't really want to challenge the Genjis one-on-one, and you gotta have Color Hex feel confident enough to get up on the high ground and at least pressure Urster out.
Right.
Like, it's not really about winning the 1v1. He just needs to go up there and put enough pressure on him to not allow him to just dominate this high ground.
Ursta gets 25% of his ultimate from jumping behind, throwing, you know, shurikens and dashing through. And
you also don't want to use Jerry's dynamite up there and throw because it's such a
no value for one target.
No, for one target. It's the opposite way you would want to use dynamite.
Well, speaking of dynamite, that one just got swatted back at the rain, and Edison goes down early. Oh my, Byombong! I mean, fantastic. He just goes for an Ant Matrix kill there, and there wasn't enough time for Edison to respond. By the looks of things, but Ursta comes back in with the blade, and great recovery from Atlanta. They're forced to use a couple of key ultimates, but I mean, as far as ult for ult goes, it's not unreasonable, especially with only 6 seconds left in the round, Matt.
It doesn't look like Boston's going to be able to get a touch. Punk switches over to Wrecking Ball as Jerry gets Masa, but it doesn't matter. As now you're looking at what draw best case scenario for the Boston Uprising.
And they've been able to secure draws on this map before, in fact.
No, with the way that Myongbung's played, sorry, but I feel like he almost reminds me of Shu from last year, in the sense that we all thought Shu was a really good flex support, but Guangzhou just wasn't really winning a ton of games.
Yep.
Where Myongbung has played so well for the Boston Uprising.
Are you saying that Myongbong reminds you of maybe Aim God?
Well, we haven't really seen Aim God have a ton of success after Boston, right? Like, I mean, when Aim God was on Boston, they were still a pretty good team at that moment.
But Boston has always been a team that has channeled a lot of strength in their flex support position.
It's also true. Neko was really good when he was with Boston.
They've always had a really strong Zen or flex support player, so that's I never really feel like that's been a weakness for them. I think it's, you know, I honestly, like, if I look at Boston Uprising's lineup now, I don't actually see a lot of like really weak players in any of these positions, right?
No.
I think a lot of their woes have come from strategy and coordination. I think today they've looked much better, but in the first couple of maps, bear in mind, Atlanta were kind of serving themselves up on a platter to Boston. When they stopped doing that on Numbani, that's when Boston were like, you know, struggling to find first eliminations, to start off fights positively. So let's see now what Boston do when Atlanta once again have to come to them. Bear in mind, 4 minutes on the clock for Atlanta, and they only need one tick, Matt.
So this is the same way they played this last time, and Fusions got picked off early. So it looks like the damage dealer's just trying to get in position. See Edison working one side, you're going to have Ursa coming from the other.
Okay, so they bubble Pogpo, which means that they want him to be able to hang for a little longer on that high ground, but they don't force Boston off of that platform. Jerry has the coach gun. Jerry's not in any position to fight right now. He needs to come back in. And okay, there it is. So there's Peel for Pogpo. He gets shield bash. Punk finishes him off. It had to be an immortality field used, though. And our 5 players from Atlanta, Matt, they're still trying to apply pressure to the point. Nobody puts his cooldown, and they've lost Fusions. There's a 5v5.
Yeah, so Fusions gets really weak. He's taking damage from Edison and Ursa on both sides as Masa pushes up on the break.
Punk goes back. Pulse bomb. Punk goes down. Edison cleans him off, and there it is. Eventually the range. They get what they came for, Matthew. Ultimately, it didn't take too much, and Atlanta showed that they were willing to play 5v6 for a while, right? They knew as long as we get a kill or we can force out this immortality field, we spawn way closer. We have an inherent advantage on this map as attackers. And now it's the Temple of Anubis going over and giving 2 maps in the bank for the Atlanta Reign.
Right. All they had to do was play fast on offense, put pressure on, even with a player disadvantage. They forced Boston into a really tough position. They use a bunch of cooldowns early because they have to. They don't want to give up the point right away, but still it just makes Atlanta a little bit easier to win in the long game. They still had a ton of time to make that happen, even if it didn't work out.
Jerry was definitely a bright spot for the Boston Uprising in that round. He actually, was able to find 11 final blows. In general, you know, they should be pretty pleased with that one. He actually fled a deadlifted, so he had 11 final blows of Boston's 22 on that particular map. That should tell you how much of an impact he was making. Unfortunately, it was not a load that was shared across the rest of the Uprising. They'll lose another map, and now the Atlanta Reign have a chance not only coming up to finish the series, but to win a series in which they don't win all of the maps. So stick around, and we'll see exactly what our next map happens.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Zip Chair Gaming, the official chair supplier of the Overwatch League.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Map 4 is just on the horizon here, and the Atlanta Reign are looking to try and get this series finished because, in general, the longer the series they compete in go, the more likely they are to lose them now. And it's still potential, of course, for them to be swept, obviously, if you go to a map number 5. So the Boston Uprising look a little less energetic, Matt, than they did earlier in the series. They themselves seem to have run out of steam.
You're going to have to stop the dive if you're the Boston Uprising eventually. It's something we thought would happen at the beginning of the series. Now that Atlanta's pulled it out, they have a Zarya in the mix for a lot of it now, with Hawk playing the Zarya, kind of helping out Pokpo a bit. How do you stop it if you're the Boston Uprising? I think if you're Atlanta, you continue to kind of push that dive on through, play aggressive, play fast, and do it until Boston proves they can handle it.
And so far, I mean, Boston looked like they could handle it when it came to Numbani, right? Like, we have it on record of Boston saying, okay, as defenders, we are going to sit back and we are going to wait to get dived, and then we are going to respond by punishing their main tank. The Atlanta Reign stopped that in Numbani, but they had no choice. When it comes to Temple of Anubis and you're attacking, you need to be the aggressors there.
Right.
The Atlanta Reign, however, were playing, maybe a less of a durable composition, one that's more susceptible to poke. The Ashe element in this matchup is the one that can punish the fact that these teams are playing shield tanks in general. There's not a lot of Reinhardt outside of what Boston tried to do on their attacking side of Anubis. So that's always a wild card element. Sometimes someone just gets shot in the head and there's nothing you can do about it. And then your whole dive strategy, the whole concept behind it falls apart. Now, as we go to Havana, Matt, I feel like there's still plenty of opportunity for Ashe play to be prevalent here.
So this is a map where maybe you can slow things down for Boston because the sight lines are so long for point A and when you go from point B to C, that maybe you're able to make some of these slower compositions work, create more space for your Ashe, play a little bit slower, defend your backline, because they're going to need to. Atlanta comes out on defense, and I know they're going to play the Ashe this time. But when we go in towards the warehouse, I would not be surprised if they brought out the Tracer.
Okay, I mean, Doomfist here from Color Hex would be interesting. I don't know what he'd be trying to necessarily achieve there, but it's going to be the Genji once more. And let's see, the Uprising do go with a dive. So the major point of difference between these two is that the Uprising are playing with the Zenyatta here and not with the Briggs. So let's see if the Rain, you know, if they want to play defensive dive. By that I mean if they want to counter dive. They might want to with Popo here on the left side, just waiting.
So see Popo sitting up top. He's just gonna use. He's not gonna use the leap. He's just gonna kind of fall down potentially.
If you can pressure Myunbong from here, I think
they wrap around.
Quite strong.
Yeah, he just wants to get test. Yeah.
He uses his jump now, so he's yeah, there it is. Myunbong gets picked off here, and this is a key vulnerability when you don't take the bridge.
If you can't protect Myunbong on the Zen, they're not going to be able to play this composition. So you may need to switch to like Rhine Sigma with like a Brig and play like really slow, but when that happens, you'll just see more dive come through. Like they'll just play even faster.
You do have a Sigma shield to protect Myunbong here as well. So some of this is up to Myunbong to stand obviously in a safer location. It's not all on his team.
Now maybe you can make something happen where if you move Punk over to D.Va.
Okay, there's that Ashe pickup that we sort of talked about, right? That sort of irreducible element that you can't really predict. Sometimes headshots just come through. Yeah, maybe. Okay, D.Va seems fine, but I mean, I don't think it does as much to protect the Zenyatta as a Sigma does, though. I mean, would you agree, or?
I think D.Va's with the defense matrix and the mobility and be able to like fly in and like boop a Genji or Tracer out of the way and then eat up some of that damage. At least gives Myunbong an opportunity to fight back.
Right, so we agree that both provide peel, right? But you would say that maybe the D.Va is better. Yeah.
I think the D.Va probably helps in this type of situation with the mobility of being able to help fusions on the front line, then also retreat back to cover Myunbong.
Alright, so there it is. Now the benefit of having the Zenyatta starts to show, right? Myunbong finds an important kill on Edison and then he's able to get a Transcendence to nullify Ersta's Blade. It's a 5v6 right now, favoring the Boston Uprising, but with two bobs in play, that sort of slows things down, necessitates a little bit of a reset. And Popo wasn't able to find Myunbong with the Tesla Cannon, so goes for a Primal Rage. And I think he's discussing something with his team right now because he doesn't seem to be too sure whether it's forward or back he wants to go.
I think he thought he could go in there and finish off Myunbong, but once they get Color Hex, he realized there was no reason to risk it. They already got the pick off that was going to buy them some time.
Right.
Color Hex comes in with a Blade here. Don't be surprised to see a Graviton Surge come through. Maybe you try and catch him in it.
To catch the Genji or the rest of the Uprising?
The Genji, yeah.
Okay.
You don't have, or I mean, you'll have Immortality Field, right? But you can try and grab him with the Grav, potentially.
Edison also has to be careful because if he uses Coach Gun to get away from the Genji, it might put him outside of an Immortality Field that was put down by Dogman. So he probably needs to wait for the free Genji dash from Color Hex either way. A lot of little micro interactions going to be happening here, but well, sometimes people just get blown up. Hawk was suspended in midair there with that, with Gravitic Flux and was removed. Fusions has Primal Rage, but the Rain have done a good job, Matt, of disengaging to try and recover, but losing Edison as well does not bode well.
Well, they'll go in as Popo, not close to Primal Rage. He'll get on the point, he'll die rather quickly. And what's big there is they don't have to use the Blade to do it. It's a Gravitic Flux from Punk, and they also use an Ant Matrix with a Discord, and they're able to get one pick from Jerry on a player out of the sky. I believe it was Hawk they were able to take out, so no Grav at that point.
I think a lot of people who in the past have tried to analyze or sort of make sense of what happens in high-level Overwatch matches I've often felt this way, where maybe they've overcomplicated something a little bit in their mind, right? At the end of the day, sometimes finding that first pick is more important than what ultimates can be used or where people are positioned.
Yeah, it's there's not really much to talk about when one team gets a first pick off on a player that has. There it is. You don't have a defensive ultimate, so your best case is to just kind of throw the Grav at the Genji. They're able to deal with it rather quickly.
You know what's so interesting about that as well is that Color Hex is suspended in the Grav. He can't reach the Immortality Field when he's using Blade. He doesn't have ranged attacks when he has his Blade out, and he can't cancel his Blade like he could his D-Flick. So he's stuck in the Grav and can't do anything to get rid of that Immortality Field. That's fascinating. So yeah, Hawk, very nicely done. The plan was to shut down the Genji, presumably with the Grav, and it worked like an absolute treat.
So now Boston's kind of walk in here with Transcendence. Atlanta, they'll have the Blade to use. The Transcendence comes out instantly there, Mitch, though. I mean, Ant Matrix plus Popo just diving in, and they Myungbong's so scared of dying because they don't really do a great job appealing for him at times. He used it right away. Now you don't have it for this blade.
Yeah, and Earth knows it as well. Myungbong, his first target, Immortality Field taken down pretty quickly here, but the Transcendence to follow it up would have been pretty nice. Regardless, the Uprising, I mean, look how powerful Immortality Field is, Matt. The fact that Boston can honestly come out of that not looking too bad. Jerry, classy little shot on Edison. And look, Boston are happy to trade like this. That's fine. They have spawn advantage right now. Hawk wants some ultimate charge. Fair enough. Can't dodge that. Hard rolling back here. Dogman's able to double down, and there wasn't actually an Air Matrix in play there.
It's so weird. Like, they're just, I mean, you're challenging constantly on the outside here, and you're losing players. And Boston's picking up some kills. They haven't moved the card at all. Now the card will start to move. So Atlanta, like, didn't really give up much of anything there.
Atlanta come back now, the cart, as you said, not having really moved much further forward. So all that brawling, all that fighting, and the Uprising only really come out of it with an ultimate advantage. So they get a bit of extra cart progress, to be fair, but there'll be another fight soon enough. Punk has another Gravitic Flux here, so he can really slow down the range. His shield is out there right now, so needs to be a little careful. And
Rally.
Creating space for the cart to progress, we can only assume. Here's that Gravitic Flux there. Nice bubble thrown down by Popo though.
And you also end up having the Immortality Field come through, and now Hawk, with all of this damage that's gone down, now he's turning it into damage for himself. He's able to build up a grav here. Even if Boston touches the point, you'll have Ant Matrix and a Blade here for the Boston Uprising.
Graviton Surge used there, it catches fusions, and I wonder if Hawk was actually intending to send that long back pass behind the car, but either way, we won't judge. He was able to find a kill from that now, and the Wrecking Ball is brought out by Punk. A lot of damage on Atlanta. So much so that they had to go for an Immortality Field to cover up the deficit in healing capacity. Hawk has managed to maintain a decent amount of charge here. Punk gets melted down for scrap. It's going to be a Transcendence now for Myungbong as they push on in. Hawk is well charged up, and Color Hex couldn't stand up against that. And the Uprising aren't able to get that second checkpoint here on Nirvana. Not a good omen.
No, they come close. They fall a little bit short at the end. I think Atlanta did a really nice job of using their ultimates effectively. Towards the end there, when Popo was coming back, he had a primal, so he would have been able to extend that for a very long time, even if Boston made it interesting. But what does Boston do here on D? Do you play Color Hex on the Genji again? Do you play the Ashe? Atlanta, I think they'll probably play Ashe Genji again. They even committed to it throughout the warehouse, so I think there's no reason for them to switch off of it, especially if they feel like they've started to hit a groove with it now.
Do we get more Zarya from Hawk?
I think so. They've done a nice job using the Zarya to help protect the Winston, and then they've also, I mean, Hawk's done a tremendous job of just putting down tons of damage, right? Just being able to burst like the Winston bubble, being able to put pressure on shields. Hawk's had himself a good day.
I want to hear your opinion as to why we don't see Brick from Boston here.
From Boston in general, I mean, have they looked good with Halo on the Brick? I feel like the best they looked is when they played the Rush type of compositions. When they ran in, when they had Halo on the Lucio and whatnot.
All right, well, we'll have to see how that goes down in just a moment. We, on this end, are experiencing some mild technical issues now in terms of being able to see our observer feed. So bear with us. We'll consider this as a pause. But, yeah, all right. So think about it this way, right? So Popo dives in. Yeah. Now he gets bubbled. So Myungbong's Discord Orb, if he sticks at the Popo, just gets cancelled. It just gets nullified. So.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you're beset upon by a Winston and a Tracer and a Genji, and you don't really have a shield bash to save you. So, you know, obviously, Zen doesn't provide protection against sort of that dive or flank.
Yes, and I think if you're not being able to do it with a Baptiste or a Brig, it speaks more for the overall team as rather to just in terms of like the just defensive capabilities of the team. I think it's more on the issue of everybody is. Now we're back in the game. Atlanta plays full-on dive on offense here with Popo playing the Wrecking Ball.
Yeah, and he is gone very, very deep. He just wants to get rid of Myungbong here as well. He realizes, okay, it's easy pickings, I guess, to get rid of one of their supports here. And if they can shut Myungbong down before he finds a couple of big kills, as he often has, then it'll be a win for them here. The Atlanta Reign play out of line of sight. Look at this, using everything they can just to make sure there's no stray orbs being thrown at them. And Popo is doing a lot of distracting. He's forcing Jerry to go back and look for him time and time again. And he's essentially self-sufficient behind enemy lines. Again, comes out, displaces Jerry, forces him out of position. And now Edison is ready to deploy a pulse bomb.
And we've seen them do this in the past, Atlanta. That'll be an Ant Matrix that comes down from Dogman, 2 kills through it. Pulse bomb from Edison on the fusions. They'll be able to roll over them here. Is that when they play, whether it's Popo or Gator on the Wrecking Ball can get into so many flanking positions faster than Winston and safer that it puts so much pressure on Boston. They know that he's going to come from somewhere behind. They also have to deal with the Tracer and the Genji in front. Sigma is just strong enough as a hero to kind of take pole position on the car and be totally fine alone. So they're able to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he functions in so many different roles, right? I mean, people in Plat seem to think he's a main tank. That's just how effective he is at so many things. But Winston cannot really flank dive you. Like, you can't sneak in behind you without getting spotted. Nice little dive there on Edison to take some of the bite away from Atlanta Reign. And they might want to back away. Otherwise, they feed more opposite over to a Boston Uprising who's already fielding quite a few key abilities for the next fight.
Yes, but as we typically see with these types of scenarios, Boston will be the team that has to invest a lot of ultimates to get these defensive stands, and with Atlanta having so much time, really just need 2 fights for Atlanta. Maybe even one really good one with an ultimate advantage going to the second one. You may not even get a full team fight. Punk knows that there's at least one player down there. Has to be the Tracer in this scenario.
And Matrix for Boston now. Erster plays the low ground instead. Dragon Blade is available, of course, but they lost Edison early once more, and again, that's for punishing. I mean, Boston just used that air matrix there to get some early damage. It's traded out. The Myeonbong is definitely a vulnerability for the Uprising right now, but Erster is punished for the kill. It's at least traded out, and I think Boston are happy with that. If they can at least trade the kill onto Myeonbong, then they stand in good stead to win the fight still. This is broken down a little bit, but the Atlanta Reign are just trying to see what they can get with only 4 players or so.
Yeah, and Boston Fusions has to use his Primal Rage to stay alive there, because Hawk uses the Gravitic Flux and throws a few orbs into Fusions, and he's so low that if he doesn't use Primal, he would have ended up dropping there. So you get the Primal Rage out from Fusions, and now Hawk can go over to Zarya. And this is a game-winning type of scenario, because now Urser uses Blade, Transcendence will come through, you will then have a free grab, pretty much. Which any amounts of kills that come off of that, you're in a good spot. Urser takes out Jerry straight away.
Again, we overanalyze it. Sometimes it's the first pick that's all that matters, and with Jerry going down so early on in the piece, the ultimates may not really be that big a factor. Here's a Transcendence, but it's too late to save Fusions, and it wouldn't have kept him alive anyway. Not good for the Boston Uprising now. Punk is trying to deal with Erster. Erster gets past. The accretion wasn't available. Now he's gotten into the cookie jar. He comes out with Myeonbong in pieces, and, well, Jerry able to trade that kill, but that is all. The Atlanta Reign have cleared everything they had to get through, except for Fusions on the Wrecking Ball, who doesn't last too long at all. The Atlanta Reign finally shake the monkey off their back, or so it would seem, with Color Hex going down so early. Halo's going to try and stall out the car a little bit more. Punk goes down, and Edison will just, just recall on the car. Why not? Stays alive. Grab is there, and they've done it. The Atlanta Reign finally win a series in which they don't win every single map against the Boston Uprising.
Yes, once Atlanta started to play aggressive, they looked good and they were able to get the advantage. It's just that map 1 was so odd. Their strategy was to play slow, play right into what the Boston Uprising wanted them to do, and they end up losing it. But it's good to see the adjustments come out from the Atlanta Reign throughout the series, and maybe they can gain some confidence out of this. It's not the best team in the world that they beat after losing a map, but it is a win after losing a map to a team. So maybe this is something they can finally...
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think there's still promising signs for both squads here. I think that's clear to see. Jerry obviously looked amazing as always for the Boston Uprising. I don't think anyone has ever really had a bad thing to say about Jerry, maybe since he's been on this team. If you talk about someone who's hyped up, he's kind of lived up to the hype more than many other players that have gone before him. The Atlanta Reign with Popo, they look rougher around the edges, I think. They look just a little bit more streaky, but they managed to make a lot of these dives work really well, and we are starting to see some connection. Instead of Edison having to be the first one to start the dive, it's Popo now. Edison can follow it up. He doesn't have to have the spotlight on him. He can let Popo soak up a lot of the threat, and then he can more safely get in and be able to, do his job under less pressure. So it's a different look from Atlanta.
Right.
Honestly, it seems to suit them really well, but Matt, I want to talk about our player of the match here, someone who brings out a pick that we haven't seen too much of recently. Hawk playing a lot of Zarya on some maps that weren't necessarily conducive to her looked really good.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think Hawk on Zarya made one of the biggest impacts today. Over the course of the series, it allowed Pogpo to play a little bit more aggressive, use the Zarya bubble to be able to live through some of the Discord orbs, or to just kind of negate the impact of it straight away. And then I also think having the Graviton Surge as an ultimate, they use it to stop the Genji Blade a few times, and then also they use it a few times to get the Transcendence out, to allow Ursa to get those free blades off. So I think Hawk was great on Zarya today. I think the Zarya call from Atlanta overall was a really nice one.
Yeah, and they make it work, and they, show us some more innovative ways to actually get value from the Zarya outside of just shielding your main tank. And, think about the way Zarya's used now as opposed to how she was in GOATS, right? And what she was supposed to do. I like the setup there. It makes it harder for teams that field their Zenyatta to put that extra pressure on your Winston, right? Pogpo's getting blown up a lot less early in the fights than he was on, let's say, Numbani when he was being punished extremely hard.
Yeah, and I think you'll see some teams make this type of adjustment, but with hero pools moving out and moving away starting next week, and you have Orisa back in the mix.
Right, where does Zarya get value then?
Right. Where does Zarya get value? Where does Winston get value? I think it'll be a much different looking meta than what we've seen these 2 weeks.
Fundamentally, obviously, and many people are probably already aware of this, even if they haven't thought about it specifically, but Zarya gives you much more value when you aren't playing with a static shield setup, right? Zarya doesn't get value from her bubble unless, your Reinhardt has purposely dropped its shield, or unless your Sigma has either retracted the shield or a step forward from it, and normally that's not what they want to do. They want to get value out of it here, so we really don't see Zarya that much outside of, brawl compositions that have Reinhardt just want to charge for, which isn't really viable right now, and with a Winston. So it's nice to get a glimpse of that. Both of these teams are going to have to pivot to something a little bit different in the coming weeks, and especially Atlanta now, who have a real shot at, maintaining some sort of presence in the top 8 of this Countdown Cup. We'll probably be, mindful of it. They've had to make a lot of changes over the last, sort of couple of weeks. They adjust to a new hero pool. They have a new main tank in. Calling structure may change, but it's pillars like Hawk, the really consistent factors for their roster, that they have to rely on and have been able to rely on in a match like this.
Yeah, I think Hawk has been rock solid for them all season long. Extremely consistent. And I think now that you see him play the Zarya, we know what he can do on Sigma, Diva as well. Just going to become more of a mainstay for the Atlanta Reign. I'll be interested once we go back and everything's open and available if we still see Pogpo, or if we see them go back to Gator. Maybe we see a combination of the two. Pogpo for more maps where they want to play aggressive with a Winston and a Ryan, a Risa specialist for Gator. So I'm interested in see how they split up these tanks.
Yeah, and maybe provides a little bit more proof of concept for the idea of having bench players or substitutes or specialists as well. I think that idea, like, we go back and forth on whether that really makes sense a heck of a lot. And the Atlanta Reign, look, they came into this week with the 4th highest first elimination rate. So we spent so much time across this series talking about win conditions, talking about how you set up fights, right, to win. But at the end of the day, the Atlanta Reign are a team that are able to get that, that first elimination 52.2% of the time, which sees them at 4th place. So a lot of their fights aren't actually decided on that theory crafting of how the compositions interact. It is just from those first kills. And we saw that in the final fight of this map with that, I think it was it Edison finding the first pick, or Erster, either one.
Did you, I thought Edison also as well today on Ashe was quite good. Yeah. I don't know if it's, well, it's kind of hard to judge, right? Because you're playing against Boston. Like, if it's like at the same level of Baby Bay, but I think you can definitely see it is good and serviceable. It's not like they cannot play it. So now I think it just gives Atlanta another look.
Yeah, your playstyle changes a lot, though, as Ashe, whether you're playing against Dive or Winston or against Reinhardt, right?
Right.
Against Winston, it's much more reasonable for you to expect to be able to zoom in. First of all, because you're not getting dove by Winston, but because you could get dove by Winston, but more importantly, you can find picks, right? You don't have to fire past 2 shields. It's not unlike an Orisa Sigma and just making it pointless. In the case of Orisa Sigma or double shield, you rely a little bit more on getting more value from your dynamite and pressuring healing resources out. So, like the way that Ashe wants to play can differ a little bit here. It's less shield pressure now against a Winston and more about just trying to pick off a Zen, across the map with a scoped shot.
I would have been interested to see how he would have done faring against like a full-on dive, like a lot of pressure on him. and the rest of Atlanta, trying to play around the Ashe.
So what do you mean maybe against if Boston played like a Tracer
Genji,
setup?
yes,
Right.
exactly, with like the Winston play, like how they would have went about that. Would they have matched it? Would they have played the Ashe? How would they have gone about things? But I think we'll figure that out over time. I think they'll start to play against some of the other competition in the league, and then maybe we see, the Orisa plus Ashe come back, but they'll have to play some kind of mirror matchups.
Yeah, I think, look, Atlanta looked a bit one-dimensional trying to play just Genji Tracer against the Florida Mayhem.
Agree, yeah.
Now they got the Ashe involved. Pokepo comes in now as well, and we have a chance to get some words from him in an interview with Zoe.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Dongmin here to help out with translations as well. And Pokepo, welcome, and of course, congratulations.
뭐 일단 승리 축하드려요. 일단 환영하고. Thank you.
First, as we throughout the majority of the season have seen Gator in as the main tank. Now you coming back in up until now, we've only seen you playing on 16 maps. What brought about that change?
이번 주에는 사실 시즌 내내 거의 대부분 게이터가 뛰고 있었는데 이번에 전략적인 그런 픽이었는지 그런 수합이었는지.
뭐 둘 다 어느 정도 차지하고 있겠지만 제가 봤을 때는 영웅 풀 때문에 제가 이번 경기는
마이크
참여하지
껐다 켰다
않아.
아니야? 마이크 빨리 좀 크게 말해봐. 아예 안 들린다.
들려요 이제?
빨리 다시.
그 둘 다 어느 정도 비중을 차지하지만 이번 경기는 영웅 풀 때문에 제가 경기를 뛰지 않았나 싶습니다.
Usually I think any player, I think both of us are interchangeable, but I think this week it was mainly because of hero pools.
All right. So with next week having Orisa back in the lineup, do you expect to stay in, or will we make a swap again to Gator?
다음 주에 이제 다시 오리사가 영웅 풀로 다시 돌아오는데 이제 본인이 할 것 같은지 아니면 다시 게이터 할 것 같은지.
솔직히 오리사는 게이터가 더 잘한다고 생각하기 때문에 게이터가 뛸 것 같지만 저도 연습해서 다시 주전 자리 노려보도록 하겠습니다.
I think for now Gator is definitely the better Orisa, so I think Gator will play, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to try like even harder for the starting spot.
Right on. I mean, honestly, watching you and Reinhardt has been a blast whenever we got to see it. Today, not just that we see you in game, we also saw a general kind of shift. It was a bit of a different look from your team. Last week, you guys saw a lot of success being very aggressive. Today, initially, you didn't play aggressive. Was that a play style or rather strategy coming into this game against the Boston Uprising?
원래 지금까지는 저번 주도 그렇고 좀 공격적인 모습을 많이 보여줬는데 팀 전체적으로. 근데 오늘은 좀 그런 면, 처음에 이제 시작부터 공격적이지는 않는 좀 그런 면을 보여줬습니다. 보스턴 좀 보스턴의 플레이 스타일 때문에 좀 그랬던 것 같은지.
네, 원래는 공격적으로 하려 했는데 물론 처음에도 그렇게 해서 몇 번 좀 안 좋은 모습 보여줬고요. 근데 하다 보니까 좀 바꿔야 될 것 같아서 저희가 좀 공격적이지 않게 플레이했던 것 같습니다.
Yes, it was kind of their play style. We kind of tried to go aggressive in the beginning of the match, but after a couple of failures on our end, we thought we needed some adjustments, and we just decided to kind of slow down, not go as aggressive.
Right on. Well, in the end, it worked out for you guys as you did take the W, and that means you're on a good trajectory for the Countdown Cup, of course. You think you're gonna be one of the highest seeded team in that one?
이제 다가오는 이제 토너먼트가 있는데 여기서는 이제 좀 상위권 시드에 배치될 걸로 기대하시나요?
네, 저는 저희 팀 충분히 잘하고 있고 또 더 발전 가능성이 있다고 보고 있기 때문에 네, 높은 시드에 배치 받을 것 같습니다.
Yes, I mean we're a really good team and we can do even better. So I think if we can just keep this up, we can be placed in a pretty high seed.
Right on. Well, lots to look forward to. Dongmin and of course Pokpo, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now going to head into a very quick break, and afterwards we are back with the second match of the day. It's going to be the San Francisco Shock facing off against the Florida Mayhem. You don't want to miss it.